Hello and welcome to this week's ThesisReady.com video tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at the dominoproject.com, which is a new project from Seth Godin. This site is running Thesis and was developed by Willie Jackson, who's a really talented thesis developer. As you can see, the posts have a cool element on the right-hand side, basically a post summary / opt-in box. It includes the date of the post, the author, the comment count, as well as a link directly to the comments, an email list opt-in box along with a small bit of call to action text, and then it also has a pair of social media buttons, which we won't be covering in this video. So that's what we'll be recreating from scratch on our own site today. We'll create the box and everything in it, and if I scroll down a bit, you'll see that the box is there anytime there's a full post. Anytime you see a full post, it's there, but it's not there for the smaller teaser posts. If you go back up and click on the link for a permalink page, the box is there as well. As you can see, we're over on the development server. It's just a fresh copy of Thesis with some demo content added. The first thing you'll notice is that the site is set up in one column mode, which isn't standard. Here's how we'll set that up. We'll start by going into our administration area here under Thesis. We're going to click Design Options. Go ahead and set the page columns to one column at 800 pixels. And now we're going to set it to full width framework with an outer page padding of none. That's all for the site layout section. In the display options section, make sure everything in the bylines section is unchecked. This will keep your default post meta information from being displayed. This is important as it will keep us from displaying duplicate information for no reason. Now, under Homepage Display Options, we've set the number of featured posts to show to 4. You can set that to whatever you want, really. If you want to show everything as a featured post, just select the highest number in the dropdown. We're just using 4 for this example, and Seth's site used 2. The last thing we need to do is come down here to the Multimedia Box section and select Don't Show Box in the drop-down menu. Then go ahead and click the Big Ass Save button. And with those settings in place, your site will look like this. That's it for setting up Thesis. Next we'll dive into PHP and building the function. So we're going to start building our function now. If we look back at Mr. Godin's page, we can figure out everything we need. We'll need the date and the author as well as the comments. We're going to hold off on the social media buttons for now, but that will be in part 2 of this tutorial, so watch out for that. We will, however, be including the email opt-in form as well as that little chunk of call to action text. So let's jump into our custom functions.php file. Start by adding an action. It's going to fall under thesis hook after headline, and we're going to call this function post social box. Now we'll go ahead and create that function. So we've got function post social box here. We're going to add the global $post variable to the first line. We discussed this in a previous tutorial, and this variable is important because it allows us to pull all of the other post related variables and functions outside of the loop. So now we'll create a div with a class of post social box. Inside of that, we're going to create a paragraph with a class of the date. After that, we add the time function. You'll notice that rather than just using the date variable, we're using the time get option date format. The reason we're doing that is because if we just use the date, it would only show the date of the posts, which would make multiple posts on a given day indistinguishable from one another. You can learn more about that in the WordPress codex at the URL on the screen. Moving on, we're going to add a paragraph with the class of the author. We're going to add written by and then the author function, which outputs the display name of the post author. Now we'll add the comments section. We start by adding another paragraph with the class of the comments so we can style it later. Then we're going to add a link using a href php comments link. This function is a WordPress function which will link directly to the comments section of a post permalink page. Then for the anchor text, we'll use the comments number function here. The 3 parameters coincide with the number of comments. So the first is what to display if there are no comments, then what to display when there is one comment, and then what to display when there are many comments. The percent sign will be replaced with the number when there are many comments. This will display how many comments a given post has in our little box. Now just close the link and close the paragraph, and we'll move on. Again, we're not including the social media links in this tutorial, but we will in an upcoming sequel to this tutorial, so watch for that on ThesisReady.com. So for now, we've just left some placeholder text here for when we do add those. If you want to try this yourself, check out the Social Sharing Buttons video tutorial. Now we'll add our email opt-in form. We're just using a generic form here because we don't have an Aweber or MailChimp code for this tutorial. If you do have code from one of those sources, go ahead and copy it in place of this section. Otherwise, use what we have here: an input type of text, an input type of submit, and a value of subscribe. That's just to create a generic form. Make sure it's also wrapped in a paragraph tag and give it its own class. I'm using the form here. Lastly, we're going to create a paragraph with the class of the pitch. Then go ahead and put your call to action text in there. This is just some dummy text. Hopefully yours will be more persuasive than ours is. Feel free to get more creative with the HTML here as well if you want. Then close out the paragraph. We'll save and refresh, and as you can see, we have an early version of our email collection box. We have everything there: the date the article was published, the author, a link to the article's comments, and our opt-in sign-up form, as well as our call to action text. It's pretty ugly right now, so we'll get into the CSS and style this bad boy next. Alright, so we've created our function and now we need to style it. So we'll jump into our custom CSS file. The first thing we'll do is set the page background to a light gray. We'll save and refresh, and now you can see that the background behind the content sections is light gray. This will serve to help us recreate the full effect from Seth Godin's site and differentiate between the content and the background. Now we'll set the headline area of the post to relative. This is just so we can put the box right where we want it. Check the link on the screen for a quick overview on CSS positioning. It's tough to understand at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can do pretty much anything. Next, we'll create a new rule for the post social box, which is the div that contains all of our new content. We'll target it by .custom.post.postSocialBox. Now we'll set the background to match the page background. Save and refresh, and you can see we have a big gray box that wraps around the post info. Give that a width of 160 pixels, save and refresh, and you can see that the box doesn't take up the entire width anymore. It's forced to fit in just 160 pixels. Now we're going to set the height to 300 pixels. We'll save and refresh, and you can see the change there as well. Our text doesn't quite fill it up, but it does give us more room to work with. If you want to fill it in with more text, feel free to adjust the width and height to whatever you think works best. Time to add a padding of 2 ems. We'll save and refresh that, and that spaces everything out a bit and moves the content away from the edges. Now we'll set the position to relative. This is so we can position it relative to the post title. Then we'll set the position to 10 pixels away from the top and the right to 100 pixels. Save and refresh, and you can see the change, but it's not quite right. It's getting there, but not right just yet. So we'll come back over here and set the float to right. Save and refresh, and now our box is positioned right where we want it, and it's taken out of the flow of the content. It's looking good, kind of sneaking onto the post there a bit and matching our background. Nice. Now we're going to give it a nice little shadow effect. So we'll put in a Moz box shadow set to inset with an X offset of 2 pixels and a Y offset of 2 pixels, as well as a blur of 2 pixels. Then we'll just set the color to a slightly darker gray. We'll save and refresh that, and now you can see we have a nice little shadow there. I haven't included the box shadows for WebKit and other browsers. To learn how to do that, check out the URL on the screen. Alright, time to make this a little easier to read, so we'll set a font size of 1.3 ems to make the text larger, save and refresh, and that's looking much better. It does increase the padding a bit and push it further into the post, but that's fine, it's still looking good. Last, we're going to set the font weight to 900. You can experiment with that a bit, see what you like best. And we're also going to set the margin bottom to 0.5 ems. That way everything is separated out a bit. We'll save and refresh, and very nice. And if you want to target things specifically, you can put in .custom .post social box, and let's say we wanted to alter the form. We'll set the margin bottom to 2 ems. We'll save and refresh, and you can see that it just moves this section out a little bit. We don't want that though, not for what we're building here. That was just an example to show you what you can do. Here's what our finished product looks like. It's a really nice way to incorporate an opt-in box right into your posts. It draws the eye, yet it's not obnoxious like a pop-up or anything like that. Feel free to play with the colors and fonts here, as there's a lot of room for you to experiment. And be sure to watch for part 2 of this tutorial, where we'll get into including the social media buttons right inside of these opt-in boxes. Feel free to leave any suggestions, questions, or problems you're having with this tutorial in the comments section below this post. We'd love to hear them, and we'd love to help however we can. Until next time, thanks for flying with ThesisReady.